Thank you for listening to the Divine Nobodies podcast with Eric Ajna and Jennifer Lynn. If you enjoy this episode, please like and subscribe so you never miss a show. If you're on Instagram, please follow us at Divine Nobodies Podcast and join our ever-growing community of lightworkers and spiritual visionaries. Together, we can raise the frequency of our planet and bring in a new era of awakening and inner standing. Welcome to our tribe. And now your hosts, Eric Ajna and Jennifer Lynn.
Oh, welcome for tuning in to the Divine Nobodies podcast. Imagine if I just did the entire podcast in an English accent. I was like, oh, thank you for tuning in.
Oh, dear God.
Should I try
Please,
it?
no.
Should I try it one year?
No, you should not.
No? I'd be like, oh, hello, Jen. How are you? And I always like ended up with like this,
You sound like Santa.
Like Santa Claus? No,
Yeah.
Santa Claus has a deeper voice. This is more like the grandma in the movie Hook, you know,
Yeah.
like Wendy. She's like a million years older than she actually is. Do you remember this shit?
I didn't see Hook.
Yeah, I've been practicing my English accent, but I don't want to sound like just any English woman.
It's terrible.
I want to
though.
sound like one of those like old, like aristocratic grandmothers. It's like, oh, Jennifer, hello, oh. Like always laugh for no reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I should bring like we should have tea time at some point. Maybe during
Spot
the show.
tea?
I think a spot of tea.
Yeah.
Actually, I took a high tea class a while back.
You did?
That pretty much taught me all the bells and whistles of what you should do as well as what you shouldn't do while enjoying tea.
I want to know about that.
Yeah, you never think, but I think it's something that.
What's your top takeaway from that training?
The top takeaway actually is that a few things. It's not even just about the tea because there's a whole, the whole caddy that comes out. It's got like the
Sugar cubes and all
sugar
that.
cubes. It's got like the pastries. There's like this whole process involved. And if you don't want to be, if you want to kind of be up there with all of like the sort of aristocratic people that engage in this sort of shit, you have to do this shit right. Otherwise, people will think of you as a degenerate.
A dumb American.
Exactly. One of the things that I did actually learn was that it's not really appropriate to stick your
Pinky out? I sometimes do that out of like reflex, I don't even notice that I'm doing it.
Well, that's different. You're not doing it in some attempt to try and look a little bit more upscale.
Oh, no.
Right? The people that do
actually
that,
try to be conscious to not do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, tuck that pinky in.
But there's a functional reason behind the reason why people used to do that is because back in the day when they had the cups, the little porcelain cups, they didn't have handles on them.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So they used to do that as a way to balance out.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, a cup of tea really isn't that heavy.
No, but
somehow it was just sort of good manners and
that makes
good etiquette
sense
to do that.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other things, which is like, when you're getting your pastry or your scone, you don't want to take the jelly or the butter directly from the plate onto your scone. You want to get a little generous helping, put it on your own plate, and then from your own plate to the scone.
That makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You never know. I might end up coming across some beautiful English woman.
You never know.
And she might want to sort of test my knowledge on that sort of thing. And I figured there's just something really cool to put into your toolbox.
Yeah, I like it. Do you put milk in your tea?
No.
No?
I just straight up drink my tea.
Just with nothing in it?
But honey is good though.
Yeah, I like honey in
I really,
tea.
really like honey. I went to Mount Shasta. We talked about that at Mount Shasta a while back, and I picked up some Mount Shasta honey.
Ooh, Mount Shasta honey?
Yeah, it was amazing.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Some wizard living at the base of the mountain that has
course.
ties with the telos that's just, making batches of this shit, selling them to the people that come across. I ended up finding some, and it was really good. And ever since I had gotten that honey, I became a really big fan of putting honey in my tea.
Yeah, I like honey in my tea too.
Yeah? What kind of tea do you like to drink?
I don't really have like a favorite type of tea. I like green tea cold.
Yeah.
So I'll drink iced green tea quite a bit. I like black tea, with just lemon. I don't like sweet tea. And I'm from the South, so that's like, profanity to say that I don't like sweet tea.
Yeah.
But I like tea without sugar.
Yeah.
I don't I don't know why.
For the longest time, I think I found the extent of my tea knowledge went as far as whatever Starbucks had. And I also liked green tea and stuff like that, but it wasn't until some of my friends, and this was years and years ago, took me to one of those Asian owned tea places.
Oh yeah.
And they get down with their tea, let me tell you.
Yeah, like Din tea. What is it? Ding tea?
Yeah, like oolong tea.
Yeah.
Right? They also have like boba tea.
Oh yeah.
They have all different.
I don't like boba.
Well, some people do, some people don't. But the one thing that I like about those places is they have like really unique flavors that you would never get anywhere else. They have rose tea, lavender tea.
Yeah. Lychee.
Lychee, exactly.
I love lychee anything.
Really? It was the first time in my life where I actually thought a tea that I had consumed, which is the rose tea, was a beautiful, beautiful flavor.
Really?
It's just a beautiful tea. So now I call it beautiful tea.
Beautiful tea. I like that.
When I'm with who I'm with, I'm like, hey, do you want to go get some beautiful tea?
Okay.
And they're like, oh, you're such a romantic.
You are. You're a softie.
Yeah, that speaks to my Libra side. Hey, Jen, by the way, we're on the big 30, the 30th episode. We are now a young adult.
We are.
Hopefully we're a little bit more emotionally aware, maybe like any other 30-year-old, but it's crazy. It's definitely a milestone that we're hitting.
We've come a long way.
Yeah, especially this is actually...
From episode 1 to now?
From episode 1. Making a lot of strides. I mean, this is the last episode that we're going to make prior to the new year. They may actually come out after the new year, but the content is what matters.
Right.
And wanted to take this episode to kind of just reflect on everything that we've gone through just between me and Jen, because this has been a really, really wild and interesting ride for both of us.
Yeah, sure has.
And it was something that started not even a year ago. And to put it in perspective for you, you would think that, if you've been a listener of our show for quite some time, I go through this because it feels like we've been doing it for a long time, but we've only been doing it for less than a year.
Yeah, less than a year, really like 8 months.
Yeah, 8 months. And to think of all of the life that we've had in the studio and just all of the life that we've breathed into ourselves when it came to just developing this as a practice. There's a lot to learn and a lot of mistakes that Jen and I have made during this process.
So many.
You know what I mean?
I mean, we've lost full episodes.
That's true.
Lost full episodes with guests on them.
That's true.
So
yeah. And
from recording mistakes.
And I remember when me and Jen initially got together we had this vision and this dream of being able to offer just the collective wisdom that her and I have, just gathered throughout our lives and throughout our years, but also at the same time being open to learning more from other people. And that was kind of the initial objective. And I think that's probably what we should be appropriate to talk about, which is Divine Nobodies podcast just in general.
Yeah.
Right. So,
oh my gosh, this whole year has been such a huge learning experience in so many different facets of my life. But this podcast specifically, I mean, all the spiritual based books that I've read and all the guests that we've had on, I mean, it's just been one learning after the other. Yeah.
And initially, just to give you guys some perspective, I was a sound healer prior to the podcast, and I was primarily doing sound baths in LA prior to quarantine. And that was really my platform that I used in order to spread my teaching along with just sound healing in general. And then as a result of, quarantine, a lot of those yoga studios shut down. And a lot of my colleagues and people in the New Age community had to find alternative ways in order to, spread their messages and do their light work. And for me, it became as this sort of like intuitive impulse to try and move in a different direction. I started, recording a lot of the talks and messages that I wanted to share with others. But Jen came synchronistically into the space once this narrative came into my field. And me and Jen have known each other for a really long time, I think since 2014, 2015 or so. And we've been really close friends during that time. And it was not even 8-9 months ago where, we ended up hanging out, and I was discussing this sort of this vision that I had of creating a podcast. And she helped sort of like roll it all together for me, because she very well also is on her own spiritual path, and she has her, her teaching and a lot of wisdom. She's a really, really intelligent woman. She's got a lot of insight, a lot of perspective. And I think what's really, really important to point out is that in 2014, 2015, when we met, we were on this accelerated path of spiritual growth.
Oh, 100%. That was like my time to spirit quest.
Yeah.
Like that's when I really went full-fledged into like, okay, I got to figure this out.
Right. And it was very much the same for me. The energy was heightened for a lot of people, especially in my community, in my circle of friends. There was something about 2015 that catapulted a lot of people just headfirst into spirituality and into the New Age community. And little did I know that we were, had no idea that we were slowly conditioning each other to take on this task that, 5-6 years into the future, we would be undertaking, which is a Divine Nobodies podcast.
How about that?
Yeah. And the initial goal that I think that me and Jen had kind of comes in with the name. I am traditionally versed in Eastern spirituality, Advaita Vedanta Hindu spirituality, which covers really the entire spectrum of Eastern and Western spirituality. It all connects. And the divine piece is obvious because the objective and the intention behind the show is that we want to embody our light work and teach, and also learn, while also having people learn with us by listening. But the Nobodies part is, I think, the most pronounced and the most meaningful part to me, because the one thing that I noticed further along my journey, especially into spirituality, is it isn't so much about becoming somebody else. It's not so much about taking one set of circumstances or levels of conditioning and creating an entirely different you in the way that you think. There is another you that comes as a result of your practice, but it isn't, a transfer of, one set of you into another sort of characteristic. For me, it became a process of subtraction. A lot of my journey has been trying to peel through the layers of my own conditioning and peel through the layers of the things that I thought that I knew about life, about spirit, of God, and subtracting those and getting rid of those. And it makes me think, and I brought this up before, about Buddha talked about, somebody asked him what he gained from meditation. And he says, I didn't gain anything. I can tell you what I lost, though. Lost all of my troubles, all of my anxieties. And that's really, for me, what this spiritual journey entails, which is you are already whole. You are already in eternal spirit. You are already perfect. But we have all of these levels of conditioning and beliefs sort of eclipsing our understanding of that. And it seems easier. It's definitely easier said than done to arrive at that place of just pure awareness. But it is a process, and it's been a process for me. And I think it's been a process for both of us throughout the entirety of this podcast, which is just slowly peeling through those layers and invoking various levels of understanding.
Yeah. And invoking various levels of patience too. I mean, this is a slow burn.
Yeah. So then the Nobodies part is, I feel like the more we get into this, Jen, the more that we, learn and discuss and have more guests on, the more I find myself becoming more of a nobody than I was before. Nobody in the sense that if you're nobody, then you're essentially everything. If you're nothing, you're essentially everything.
That's a Joe Dispenza teaching.
Yeah.
So he does a meditation where you just kind of like repeat to yourself that you're no one, you're nobody, you're no thing, you're no time, you're no nothing. Yeah. So you can be everything. Exactly.
And it makes me think of, and I think we talked about this before, about how me and you kind of grew up and we didn't feel this sense of belonging in, very specific types of groups. Although we did have stereotypes, the one thing that I struggled with is I never felt like I belonged to any one specific group. And I had a conversation with somebody a long time ago, and I just told them, I was like, hey, I don't feel like I really belong anywhere. And they're like, it's because you belong everywhere.
Yeah. Who told you that? A kid told you that?
It was a friend from
That's
from
some
school
enlightened
just a long
shit
time
from
ago. Exactly,
a
right?
high school kid.
Yeah, it was like a bodhisattva. I can't remember who he was, but he may have, incarnated in that life just to tell me that one fucking thing.
Seriously.
Because that stuck with me.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, there was a reason why me and you had sort of just explored the different dynamics of people, because I think that you and I are just naturally curious. And
that's true.
We wanted more. We wanted to understand more. I think a lot of that came as a result of our upbringing.
Right.
But there's this natural curiosity, because I think once you've touched the divine realm through meditation or plant medicine or whatever modality happens to be yours, you get this undeniable sense that there's something more out there.
And there's no turning back. I mean, we've said that so many times that once that door's been open, there's no shutting that door.
You can't.
I mean, you can try, but yeah.
It's true. Adyashanti has this quote that says, it's not like enlightenment does anything to you. All it does is show you the truth about how reality works. And once you see the truth, you have no choice but to change.
Right.
So it doesn't impose. But once you've opened that door and you see the truth, you can't unsee it, because unseeing it, or at least pretending to not see it, is just you denying your divinity.
Yeah.
So I hope that the people that are listening, that you join in this kind of journey with us and slowly becoming nobodies.
Yeah.
But there's something really empowering about that, because we're not getting lost in definitions. Mm-hmm. We're not saying that we're spiritual teachers, because me and Jen are very much students.
Amen.
And we are approaching it, or we try and approach every aspect of this show like children, just curious and wanting to learn
from other people.
Yeah, from the spiritual perspective, yes, but also just to kind of touch on what Jim was saying, this whole podcast thing has been a new experience for both of us. Mm-hmm. And we've been in the spiritual community for quite some time, but we never thought of taking a task on like this before.
Right.
So in the very beginning, when we first started, I mean, the content was there. We had that drive. We had that inspiration. We definitely had something to say. I think that we'll always have that. And me and Jen have a really unique and a really special synergy, which I appreciate, because she represents, at least from my Libra perspective, we are like this scale, where we have just the right amount of light and just the right amount of edginess and grit. And that to me is very unique and special, because that's just fucking life.
Yeah, it is.
You know what I mean? So I think it adds a really special, just unique element that I appreciate just in doing the podcast with Jen. But when we first started, we made a lot of mistakes.
Oh, yes. Our very first episode was so good, too, that we had with Jameson. Do you remember that? My living room?
I do.
Yeah, and we lost that whole episode.
That's right. Yeah, and by the way, Jameson came from Park City, Utah. And just, to give it perspective, he is a friend. He is a personal friend. He came down to visit, but the one thing that was really just hard to accept about that process was such a great interview.
It was so good. It was one of my favorites out of all the interviews that we've done. Yeah. Because it was our very first one.
Yeah.
So there was like a sentiment to it, like a sentimental attachment to it. And we don't even have it to listen to.
Yeah. And it had that natural sort of curiosity that
it was really good.
That exactly. We were very, very young in our venturing into the podcast, but he talked about divine masculinity. There was an energy there that I really appreciated. And I honestly think of it as just a rite of passage.
Yeah.
That was the universe that was like, look, you have to, if you really want this, then you're going to have to go through this accelerated process of detachment in some ways.
Right.
And what that taught me from that experience is if we had gotten that experience, or maybe that episode, it would have been great. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it was testing us at the very core of that.
Yep.
Which was how we would react, how resilient we are.
Yeah.
In reaction to that process. And it definitely hurt, especially in the very beginning, because you're trying to move something forward, something that we want to believe in.
Yeah.
And just like anybody that's experienced adversity in the past, I mean, you know what it feels like to fail. Mm-hmm. And after that feeling, I felt that. I felt that like,
oh yeah. And Jameson was in a different place in his life too. He was single. And he had a different perspective. When we had Jameson on as a man in a relationship, his message was different, even though it was the same type of content. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah. We're capturing moments in time.
Yeah.
And that's the wonderful thing about speaking to people, is that they have their teaching, but no two people is the same depending on which time they actually come in. We've had guests come in more than once, and, they're different people. And that's the beauty of how life works, is that you never get the same type of person, because everybody's constantly learning. Everybody's constantly experiencing life.
The recorded word, and I think about this with music too, is a form of time traveling, because anytime you listen to it, you're time traveling to the point when that was recorded.
Right.
So
that's true.
Yeah. So here we are, time traveling.
Yeah, we're time traveling. Exactly. It's crazy. Yeah, we've made a lot of mistakes from, that happened during Mercury retrograde too as well.
Sure did. That was a gnarly one too.
It was. Yeah. And that was at the very beginning. And,
that's at the beginning of quarantine, y'all.
Yeah. We made mistakes as far as like we've gone through episodes where the camera would shut off, you know, and we lost footage, you know, and what other sort of mistakes that we made?
We lost a whole, well, we didn't lose the video, but we lost the audio for Heather
that's
McCall.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And she was a home clearer. She was a psychic, and she was gracious enough to spend time with us, and we lost that.
Yeah. And, you know, I really want to have her on because she does healing for animals too, which I thought was super cool.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah. So, and it was funny because she did a home clearing for me, as you know. And the first thing that she said when she called was, how many dogs do you have? She was like, I'm seeing all of these animals.
She heard your dogs fighting in the background.
Yeah. Well, so I was communicating with her via email. Yeah. So we hadn't even talked yet. So whenever she called, she was like, oh my gosh, I'm picking up on all these animals in your house. How many dogs do you have? And I said, I have 3 and a cat. And she was like, there's a little black dog. And I was like, oh yeah.
Oh, black dog.
Little black dog. She called out DJ right away because he's my little spirit dog. He's the one that sees spirits and is really in tune.
Yeah. It's like my dog. Or my cat.
Yeah. Like your cat, like Binksy.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've had guests come on the show, and the reason why we're saying this is because, you know, it takes a lot. There's a lot of intention placed into making this thing happen. Mm-hmm. And as much as we love the content, we love the guests that come in, it's been a really, really deep, really intense practice for me and Jen, and discipline and overcoming adversity and just being patient.
Yeah.
You know, and
patience is so important. Oh my gosh. It's, you know, and as far as the learnings, so I wanted to ask you this since we're on the topic of just kind of like overview of the podcast, but what are some of the major takeaways that you took away from your life since we started this podcast?
From my life?
Mm-hmm. So my number one was patience, like 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I think patience is definitely key when it comes or pertains to podcasting.
Yeah,
for sure. Because the one thing, I mean, because me and Jen, we listen to podcasts. I listen to podcasts, and you know, the one thing that you see right away is the number of people that follow them, the number, the audience that they have, the engagement that they have, and you know, you want to strive to get to that place.
Right.
I would say that I'm a pretty patient person. And I think that the one thing that powered me through this process is that I just love to do it. And I'm passionate about it.
Right.
And I think we both share that.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was really organic and really fluid for me to just get behind the mic and talk to you every single time that we do, just for the sheer love and passion for just talking about this subject, just for talking about this work.
Yeah.
And that got me through, you know, really difficult times, or just some challenging moments that we've shared when kind of navigating through all the challenges you go through in a podcast. But I think the one thing
challenges in life too. I mean, so many things have happened personally for both of us in the last 8-9 months.
That's true.
You know, this podcast has really been like an outlet and kind of like a release to ground yourself.
Right. Yeah. It's been like our own little church.
Yeah.
Our non-denominational church. You know what I mean? Like
right.
I exited out of a fairly toxic relationship at the start of this podcast.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jen was there with me during that time. I was a wreck, you know, and of course I've always embodied my spirituality, but I'm also human. And I also, you know, have my own karma and my own levels of conditioning that I go through. And Jen saw me. I was just a big mess.
Yeah.
You know, and I think starting the podcast really helped, you know, bridge a connection back to my heart and gave me the ability to just fall in love with myself again.
Yeah.
And fall in love with, you know, source, and just the practice of, you know, just rediscovering and consistently uncovering like those wonderful mysteries that life has, you know?
Yeah.
And in comparison to where we're at now, and opposed to at the very beginning, I'm definitely a lot stronger now.
Oh, for sure.
And I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah. Throughout
this entire process, just by sitting in this chair and talking to you every single week, and then also having guests on and hearing like all the really phenomenal and amazing stories that they have to share.
We have had some really, really good stories, you know, like the first, one of the major come up stories that I think about is Ryan Heapy.
Oh yeah.
When we had him on, he was the therapist.
That's right. Yeah. He was a family therapist.
Yeah. So he's local here in Orange County. And, if anybody's interested or needs a therapist, he specializes in men's work as well. But Ryan had some struggles of his own, suffered from depression, and actually attempted suicide, but survived.
Yeah.
So, and that is what drove him to leaving his whole life behind to go to school to become a therapist to help other people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you hear stories like that, like it's so inspirational. And I don't know, I think about that. This is just one of our guests, and every single one of our guests has a similar type story, not with suicide, but a similar, like, overcoming major obstacles to be where they are today.
I would say the baseline really puts it in a perspective for me is that every single one of them have gone through various levels of trauma.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? A lot of people that, you know, maybe come into spirituality at the very beginning, there's this sort of, this collective sort of belief that it's just all shiny and happy all the time.
Yeah. No.
And, you know, at least from my experience in the community, most everybody that I've met that are Reiki healers, that are sound healers, that do some sort of light work, go through that door from having experienced various levels of really, really deep traumatic experiences.
No, for sure.
And that just puts it in a perspective that, like, anybody, you know, can find themselves and anybody can reach source with any various levels of trauma. You know, you can go through, you know, various forms of, you know, meditative samadhi and things like that. But the one thing that I think catapults most people to get into this type of work is being honest with the fact that they've had difficult lives. You know, Ryan Heapy, the one thing that I noticed from him that was just really powerful was, and I'm going to get really descriptive with this because Jen talked about suicide. He had a gun and he actually shot himself in the face and survived.
Yeah.
You know, and you think of how or where you must have been in your life to arrive to a low that deep and to come out of that on the other end with a message.
Not only with a message, but also to face your family and face all the people that love you, that are horrified and devastated that you would even consider that as an option.
That's
you know,
true.
because what it does to people in your life, it leaves them wondering, what did I do? What could I have done differently? And his mother, you know, think about how she felt. She brought him into this world.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's just so many, there's a lot of courage to not only survive that, but come back and openly talk about it and then help other people that are suffering with the same kind of disease.
Yeah. And it's all interconnected. I mean, I don't know the extent of Ryan's family, but, you know, there had to have been a reason why he got to that low.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can get into generational trauma and things like that, but everybody has it. Everybody has some baseline level of trauma that they've experienced as a family. And sometimes it takes experiences like that to wake up an entire generation of people to something, you know, like love.
Yeah.
And he did that. I feel like he reconnected, I imagine, with his entire family and created this, you know, newfound sense of connectivity with them.
100%. He did that. And, you know, to take it a step further, went and got a fucking master's degree. Like, that's no joke, you know, to go back and get a master's degree to actually have the credentials to help people in the same way that you needed that help.
Right.
And I don't know. I think there's something really beautiful and amazing about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love him.
Yeah. It embodies the Kali Yuga. It embodies the Maya of the dimension that we're living in, which is, you know, we learn the most through the most difficult and challenging situations.
100%.
You know, so that was episode 6.
6, yeah.
If you guys want to get in on that, we also had episode 5, which was Catherine Eipel. She was a fun episode.
She was fun, yeah.
She talked about relationships and she talked about erotic blueprints.
Yeah.
And just the balance between divine masculine, divine feminine energy, which I'm all about.
Yeah.
It's just a subject that's really fascinating to me, which is, you know, how do, as a man and as a woman, just embody a balanced male and female yin and yang energy, and the dynamics of kind of what that looks like with a partner.
Yeah.
You know, and those are the episodes that I really enjoy because I'm a Libra and my planet's Venus, and you know,
such a little lover.
Yeah. I appreciated that episode because, it was very current, and it had sort of a modern approach because we talked about, you know, online dating and, you know, just, she gave really good advice of how to navigate through just the really, really, you know, complex and complicated world of online dating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
We've all gone through that before.
Oh God.
You know what I mean?
I'm happily married now. Thank God. I don't have to deal with that shit anymore.
Hey, you know what? There's replica now. You can have just an artificially intelligent companion.
Don't even get me started on that. Don't even get me started.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I tried it out, and it's definitely not for me. But we've all tried online dating before.
Insane. Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast, that's replica.
A whole other podcast. I mean, there's so many episodes that we can go through, Jen. We had episodes on the dark night of the soul, and that would happen around the time quarantine happened.
Yeah.
And
that was a very real topic for a lot of people because so many people were experiencing that dark night of the soul right around that time.
That's true.
So I feel like we got a fair amount of engagement off of that episode of people like saying, hey, you know, I'm kind of going through this right now.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, is that, you know, when quarantine happened, pretty much at the start of this podcast, a lot of people were confined to their homes through quarantine, or at least people that were following that sort of protocol, me, myself included. And I think, you know, you and Jeremy, we all sort of like hung out in our homes for a while.
Yeah, we were pretty serious about it because in the beginning we didn't really know. I mean, there was so much unknown, and the shit that was on the news was like, oh, you know, by the end of the year, half of California is going to have this, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, that didn't happen, but you know, in the beginning it was pretty terrifying.
We didn't know what was going to happen.
No, it was the unknown. It was like, oh,
we don't know how this whole thing was going to pan out. And the reason why I mentioned is because this podcast has been, you know, my therapy as well.
Yeah.
You know, you
100%
are one of the, you know, the only people during that time that I really conversed with to the extent that I did during that time, you know, and to have quarantine and, you know, the pandemic as sort of a backdrop in this, you know, it added a very interesting type of energy.
Oh, for sure.
You know?
That's funny that you described it as the pandemic as a backdrop because that's exactly that. Give me a nice visual.
Yeah.
2020 backdrop pandemic.
Yeah, just think of like this post-apocalyptic world around us and like the buildings are crumbling around this specific room. And somehow we can still sit here and talk about and wax poetic about how beautiful life really is.
Amen.
You know what I mean?
You know, I really liked episode 8. This was one of my favorite episodes, the cacao ceremony and astral projection.
Oh yeah.
And the 18 mistakes people make early in relationships.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just have a fond memory of this episode, and I can't really even recall a lot of details from it. Which doesn't make sense that would be my favorite one, and I can't, you know, really think about it. It was just a vibe. It was a vibe. Yeah. That one had a vibe.
Yeah.
I really like that one.
Yeah, I like that one too. Because I remember that cacao ceremonies, that's when I'd gone to a cacao ceremony, an astral projection, 18 mistakes people make in early relationships. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because we got a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think that was the first time we did a list.
Yeah.
And that was a fun list.
Yeah, those are always fun, especially the relationship ones.
Yeah.
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 So I agree with you. That was a really cool energy. And if anybody's actually watching on video and you've followed us since the very beginning, our studio looked very different during that time.
Totally different. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And that's something that I think has also evolved with us because there were a lot of like ergonomically incorrect things about the studio that we used to have.
We didn't know. Yeah. We didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah. But yeah, like Jen, we had like a table made and it, you know, it looked really cool.
Yeah, it was an amazing table. Like the
really
table itself was awesome, but it was just totally not functional for what we needed.
What did you do with that
table,
we didn't know.
By
the way?
I gave it away.
You did?
I did.
Was it to another up and coming podcaster?
I hope so. I hope so.
That was a nice table, though.
I didn't ask any questions. I know it was a really nice table. It was made with love from one of my best friends, Eddie. So he made that for us.
Well, you know, we put some really good miles on it, and
We
it got
did.
us to where we are today because we had
100%.
guests come in, and
that table has got good vibes, got good energy, you know?
Yeah. And just, you know, like we were talking about before, we did make a lot of mistakes, but we gotten those hard dialed in.
Yeah.
We have our process.
Yeah.
And we're just, you know, pushing through and still learning along the way. But if you've been with us since the beginning, you've obviously, you know, caught up and got to notice a lot of those changes and developments that we've made. And
For sure.
happy with the progress that we've had so far.
Me too. You know, another episode I really liked was the Mount Shasta Lemuria episode.
I was just looking at that one.
Were you?
Yeah.
You know why I liked that episode? Because I had to read a book about Lemurians because I didn't really know much about them. Like I knew a little bit, but not enough to talk for an hour about that shit on a podcast.
Yeah.
So that week I read this book about Lemurians so I could have more information to share on the podcast because I knew we were going to be talking about Mount Shasta, which I've incidentally haven't been to yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah, that was a nice episode because that was a nice memory for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like going down there and trying to find the telos and
connecting with an alien,
having that weird sort of supernatural experience in the Airbnb that I was staying in where like stuff was moving around.
100%.
You know,
the scarf hanging on the wall,
and then having that sort of like, you know, that vision on the inside of my eye, you know, like dancing along my vitreous humor in my eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great experience. And, you know, if anybody's listening and you, you know, you're really sensitive to energy, you want to learn a little bit more about just mystery schools and just esoteric teachings, just go down to Mount Shasta, Sedona. You've been to Sedona. I've been to Mount Shasta.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very similar stories and ley lines.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So cool. That was a great episode. And I really, the one after that, it was the one before with Yvette Thomas.
Oh yeah.
The evolutionary astrology. I'd never even heard of evolutionary astrology before she came on.
Yeah, it was a different take.
Yeah. She totally went into detail about, a little bit more about that. And, had you heard of I can't talk tonight. Evolutionary astrology.
Try saying it in an English accent. Evolutionary astrology.
You need to have a corgi in your lap and a spot of tea.
Oh, I know, right? A spot of tea.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that before. So I thought that what she had to say was really interesting, especially surrounding like soulmates and twin flames and how she called soulmates soul grinds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really, really interesting.
Yeah, she knows the truth. You know, those aren't easy relationships.
No, they're not.
I really like Yvette's Instagram.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that she's pretty well known as far as on social media for, is that she creates these really awesome, informative memes where she takes like, you know, one zodiac sign, say like a Libra, and then pairs it with like a Gemini, and it tells you all the pros and cons of what you may experience if you embark on that journey. So, you know, you happen to meet somebody, just hop on her. What is it? I Chat Astrology.
I Chat Astrology.
I Chat Astrology. You
I can't talk. I Chat Astrology.
I Chat Astrology on Instagram.
Yeah.
And you can find whoever it is that you're matched with and learn a little bit more. I actually learned a lot from her memes because she talks not even just about how you're compatible, but like struggles that, you know, those two signs put together go through.
Could potentially have. And even whenever you started dating a new Aquarius and you're like, hey, tell me some things about Aquarius. And I just started screenshotting her memes and I was like, these are all spot on. This is exactly what an Aquarius woman is like, which is so true because she's just so spot on with the characteristics. And
it really is. And that's one thing that I also learned a lot just in the last year or so, is just like how really true, at least it is for me, like people embody their astrological signs.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, once I find out about what their rising and their moon signs, You know,
it's
like,
over. You got their ass figured out.
And you know, I'm like a pretty skeptical person, but I know you're an Aquarius. Mm-hmm. You embody a certain type of energy. Your moon is also in Gemini. Mm-hmm. So we both have the, you know, we can communicate well.
Right.
Right. But once I got to know you at that time, you were the only Aquarius that I've ever known pretty much in my entire life. So meeting other Aquariuses and paying attention to how they communicate, you know, they're humanitarians, like they're very caring, they're very nurturing, but they're very honest and direct.
Yeah.
There's a certain energy that they embody. And then, you know, spending time with my family and learning a lot more about Tauruses, because everybody in my family are Tauruses.
That's crazy.
My sister, her partner is a Taurus. They're like 2 Tauruses.
Wow.
Right? And they're like best friends.
Whoa.
Yeah. And my mom's a Taurus, you know, and Tauruses, they're just about like, you know, like their earth energy,
yeah.
right? So they're not definite. They're definitely not materialistic, although they can be, but they just like simple, practical things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they like to have a comfortable home. They are comfortable with just hanging out and cooking a nice meal. They're not too extravagant like a Leo.
Yeah.
You know, Leos are more outspoken. They're more extroverted. They're more extreme.
Right.
And they're the lion, and that's just what they do.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know what I feel like? I feel like Bruce Lee in that movie, I think it's called Enter the Dragon, where he's going through all these different levels.
Yes.
That
was a great movie.
And I think Kill Bill with Uma Thurman, the same thing, where it's like you're meeting that level boss, and then once you go through that, you ascend to the higher level boss.
Yeah.
This year has been about learning different zodiac signs.
Yeah.
And the pros and the cons and the light as well as the dark in those.
Right.
And not even just in other people, but for myself as well, because I learned about Gemini. The only signs that I aren't too familiar with are Sagittarius and Virgo.
Oh, yeah. I had a very close friend that was a Virgo, so a female Virgo, and male Virgos are totally different. But so I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on that. But what's really interesting is Jeremy is a Cancer, and we are very, very different and typically not a good match.
Yeah, you remember you telling Yvette that.
Yeah, and Yvette was like, yeah, well, there's other things in your chart that, you know, could make you guys a good match, and obviously did. But that was a cool episode to talk to Sophia, the Akashic record reader, on episode 23, when she gave me a little bit of insight and said that I was married to Jeremy in a past life, which is why I had this affinity toward him in this life.
That's true.
Which is pretty cool.
I liked her episode because she offline, and I don't know if we mentioned this before in the podcast, but offline she gave Jen like a really comprehensive Akashic Records reading.
I mean, amazing.
Yeah. And
legit.
And Jen was kind enough to allow me to stay and kind of bear witness to that and hold space for that. And the podcast came up on your reading.
Yeah. Sure did. Yeah. That was actually the first thing that came up. So she said, okay, I'm getting into a spaceship
with psychedelic Jesus.
Yeah. With psychedelic Jesus. Jesus is here and he's wearing a psychedelic robe. And she was like, I think he's high. I don't know. Yeah. She was like, he's like stoned psychedelic Jesus. And, which is totally how, you know, I would want my Jesus to appear. Right. So, she gets in the spaceship and, asked us if I wanted to hear about a past life. And I was like, yeah, of course, bring it on. I love past life stuff. Right. And she was like, oh, you guys are, she was like, oh, the podcast, like you two are brother and sister, and you know, left your family and came to Earth to do the Earth experience together. And she was like, you're just like in the spaceship bickering. And I was like, oh, we don't really bicker, but you know, I could totally see that. Yeah.
And the way that she described this spaceship it wasn't really too detailed. It was like this big ball in the sky. And me and Jen were just floating in this sphere. And just in a very synchronistic kind of turn of events, I happened to be online. And I don't know if anybody that's listening listens to Jai Wolf, but he has this album cover.
Yeah.
That depicts basically everything that she was saying.
Yeah.
Where it's like just me and Jen floating in the sky in this magical ball. And that happened literally right after we had that reading. So it was really synchronistic. I mean,
yeah, that was cool.
She gave a lot of information about Jen and her personal life, but you know, the one validating thing about what she was saying is that we had a lot of support behind us in the unseen sort of astral realms when it came to deciding to do the show.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and that's a really, really nice thing to hear, having that support, because I definitely feel that, you know.
Yeah. yeah, of course. I mean, this was definitely created by source, like less by us. It was so easy. And, you know, I just finished that book, Shine On, where hopefully we'll have him on as a guest.
Oh, we're going to.
Yeah, David Ditchfield.
Yeah.
Wrote a book about near-death experience that he had. And I don't want to give too much away before we have him on, but basically he talks about how source acted in his life and taught him how to do things that he had no prior knowledge of. Mm-hmm. And I forget that, you know, and that's one of the learnings from this show, and something that I'm really working on, kind of like letting go, is trusting source and trusting that I don't need to have all the answers, that the answers will come whenever it's divine timing.
Yeah.
So,
because it's almost like the sense of worry almost implies that you don't trust in the process.
Right. Exactly.
You know, and we'll do any level of things when we don't trust in the process, which is get in the way of that progress.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one thing, of course, that I think most people embody just in varying degrees, but same thing for me. You know, it's hard sometimes to trust in a process, because, you know, as long as you exist here on this planet, you're having to also move through all of the different challenges that come along with that.
Right.
And, you know, we've experienced being discouraged before. We've experienced just heightened levels of just unbelievable bliss from, you know, how amazing and great an episode was, and learning from the people that come across. So we've experienced so many different types of emotions while doing this show.
Oh, so true. So true. And just made new friends, and, you know, been so connected to some of our guests. Like one of my favorite, and I don't have a favorite, I guess, cause I love every guest that we've had, but, Tyler Victoria.
Oh yeah.
I really, really enjoyed her energy, and she's just like this beautiful little sex kitten that just came in with her. Kitten. Yeah. She's so sexy and like kind of like in this
really
elegant, gothic kind of mysterious witchy way. I don't know.
She's just energy.
Yeah. She's just really beautiful. Yeah. And, did a readings for us offline too. She did, one for Jeremy, one for me, and one for you. And we had actually recorded it. And she's the very first tarot card reader / psychic that told me that I was supposed to be a medium. And I was like, well, hot damn. Mm-hmm. I've only had like 1 million psychic readings, and you're the very first person to tell me this. This is crazy. Yeah. But yeah, she was really cool. I really enjoyed her.
You know, maybe during that time you weren't ready to hear it yet.
Yeah, maybe that's true.
Saying? Like we naturally evolve over time. And I think it was just the right time. I think Sophia said the same thing to you. Yeah. You know, and it makes sense, because around that time, that's when a lot of the spiritual activity, as far as like the spirits and the entities in your home, started amplifying. Yeah. And we started diving really deep into that.
Yeah, we did. We talked a lot about it.
And the one thing that I really, I noticed about during that time when Jenn, if you guys have been listening to the previous episode, she had there was a certain period of time where she had a lot of spiritual activity in the home. But the one thing that I noticed is that it seemed like you had gone through this process of overcoming the fear you had of it. Yes. You know, there was this one time I was on the phone with you, and you had some spiritual stuff going on in the home, and you went outside and went into your car and locked the door.
Yeah, and sat in the car. I sat in the car for hours.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing? And it's just like, oh, I don't want to go inside the house. Just crazy shit going on inside of the house.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was too much, you know? And I just wasn't ready for it. And there was a certain level of fear I had, because I didn't quite understand, you know? So I watched, and this was just total divine timing. But Tyler was talking about in her reading, she said, oh, well, you need to get a mediumship mentor. You're not going to go anywhere without a mentor. And she kept referring to him as he. And then she talked about this guy that she took a transmedium class with, you know, just kind of like in passing before she even did my reading. Yeah. And I ended up looking him up on YouTube and found him. And it was crazy. Like, I was called to that video. I watched this video of him where he's talking about spirits in your home, and
Michael Mayo.
Yeah, Michael Mayo. Yeah. And negative entities, and how he doesn't ascribe to the idea that spirits are negative. Right. You know, that they're kind and loving beings, and, you know, just because they're in your house and knocking stuff over, it's because they're trying to communicate with you, not because they're trying to hurt you.
Right.
And that they can't hurt you, that you are more powerful than they are.
Right.
That their energy is much lower than yours.
That's true.
So after that, I don't know, it was kind of like a wake up call. And I was like, oh shit, you're right. They can't hurt me. Why am I scared of this? This is stupid.
Yeah. And I think that was probably one of the most powerful practices that I imagine that you had gone through, because once you have that understanding, which to me is equivalent to me overcoming my fear of death.
Right.
Right. It's like that truth, that gift that the universe gives you. Once you really touch on source and awareness, is that, you understand that the universe is loving. Mm-hmm. It's inherently good.
Right.
And yes, fear does exist, but it's fear that you create.
Right.
Yourself.
Exactly.
Right. A lot of people don't even realize that they have the power to feel whatever it is that they feel. Mm-hmm. Like Deepak Chopra had this quote, and I'm kind of abbreviating it, but he says that, like, how can you let anybody hurt your feelings when your feelings belong to you?
That's a good one.
You know what I'm saying?
I love him.
And it's just a different perspective to have. And that's really all enlightenment is. It's just a shift in perspective. And I think I mentioned this before, where Alan Watts says all enlightenment is the reevaluation of common sense. Mm-hmm. Common sense being most people aren't thinking correctly. Mm-hmm. And it's not that they need to go through some really extravagant level of practices and curriculum in order to wake up. It's just they have to just almost in a subtle way, just like the practice in Zen, is just a shift in your perception.
Yeah.
It is realizing that everything that you've believed is just a thought that you've believed in and that you've invested in.
Right.
So much of yourself. And because we invest so much in these thoughts, we think that we feel like we're losing something by giving it up.
Right.
And at least for me, that whole process of awakening made me understand that, like, even though those beliefs exist, it's not intrinsically who I am. And getting rid of those beliefs is so freeing and it's so empowering. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
It really is.
Because you make more space. Just like we talk a lot about, clearing your home and making space for new things.
Oh my gosh. That helps so much. I mean, we recently cleaned our garage out, and it was just so wonderful to be able to walk through the garage and not have just all this shit everywhere, and just donated a bunch of furniture and things that we moved from our old house. And, every object holds energy, and all of that extra energy that was just clouding our space for no reason. And I need to do that again. I need to go back through and purge one more time and get rid of, the second wave of stuff. So yeah, that's on my to-do list.
Yeah, everything has
for
like
2021.
a spiritual correspondence to it. That is almost the same as you symbolically, just the same as like somebody burning sage and clearing the house with sage. There's an intention behind that act, other than just the fragrance of that just beautiful smell going through your home. You're clearing space in your mind too.
Yeah.
You're clearing space in your emotional, sort of subtle and causal bodies.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, that's one thing that we also learned from Sophia, because she's a spiritual interior designer, which is really cool. But one thing I forgot
about that she's a spiritual interior designer.
Yeah, she got down with
super cool.
Yeah, she put a really amazing spin on, doing Akashic records for people that need to clean their shit up in their homes.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that sort of thing, at least from my understanding, isn't as big as it should be.
Oh my God. I feel like that every realtor should have an Akashic record reader to come help you out.
Yeah, right. Should come with the appraisal.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. That's funny.
You remember that episode that you did with the Journeys in Mediumship with Jen's UFO experience?
Oh yeah, that was cool.
That one was really cool, because you just happened to get actual video footage of a UFO.
That's the first time that I've ever gotten a video of a UFO. I've seen them before. This is my third UFO encounter. Mm-hmm. But this is the first time that it was, number one, that close, because it was pretty fucking close to us.
Yeah.
And number two, let us video it for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just chilling.
It's like it knew.
Yeah.
It's like it knew that you were looking at it.
Yeah. It was like posing.
Yeah. And it seemed like it seemed intentional, because, the Great Conjunction was just around the corner. Mm-hmm. This whole thing with disclosure of aliens, and that came up recently.
Yeah.
I feel like we're, at least within the next 5 or 10 years, I think Elon Musk and a handful of other people are saying that we're going to establish contact with them at some point.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we have to.
And I have to tell you about this, which, by the way, we can probably have another episode about this. I've been having really vivid dreams.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if it's because of the Great Conjunction, but the other day, and I had an outer body experience where long story short, I was in this sort of like, this sort of, it was almost like a big building.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into the back of this building and there was a construction site.
Okay.
Right. And in the construction site, they were digging holes in the ground. There were like these massive holes in the ground that they were building. And I'm not entirely sure what it is that they were building, just that there were holes there and there was construction. I walked down a little bit and I see these huge holes in the ground that you could actually look into. And I looked into one of the holes and I saw an alien spacecraft. And I had this feeling in my dream that I wasn't supposed to see it. Like whoever it is that was around in that area, it was like classified information.
Yeah.
And it was something that I wasn't supposed to see. And there was this energy that came over me that was just like, oh, it knew that I was looking at it.
Ooh, that gave me chills.
Right? There was an energy there that like, that knew that I was there looking at this. And I got this feeling in this dream that I wasn't supposed to see it. Which, by the way, before I went to bed, I was watching with a friend a few different Gaia TV and also
I love
ancient alien episodes.
Yes,
of
the
like
History
reptilians.
Channel.
We watched an episode about reptilians, about that, what was that blood type?
O negative.
Oh, there's another name for it though. RH negative.
RH negative.
RH negative blood types, right? Which Jenn is RH negative blood type.
I am.
Yeah. Jen's an alien.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was waiting for a starseed person to come on so she could look at our charts.
Yeah.
Because I saved our charts so she could look to see like in the
what our starseed archetype is.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a guest coming in the weeks ahead, probably within the next week or so. She deals in starseed archetypes, and I'm really interested in that. But we'll have to show her that when she comes on.
Yeah.
But what I took away from this dream though, Jenn, is that I woke up with this feeling that the aliens are on their way, and they're going to come from underground. Oh. They're going to come from the ocean.
How about well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, fucking octopus are aliens. Come on, y'all.
Yeah.
Like. It's very obvious.
Right.
Very obvious.
Exactly. So, I mean, I've had, various psychic type of impulses over the past, but just with more practical things. Like I'll think of somebody and that person will call me.
Yeah.
You ever had synchronistic experiences like that?
All
right.
the time.
So, it just seemed very fitting for me to have that dream.
Yeah.
Around this time.
That makes sense. And I've always thought that too. Because there's depths of the ocean that we haven't explored and, that we can't even get to. So, and there's life forms that exist in deep ocean that we have no idea.
Yeah.
that we don't know anything about, you know?
Joe Rogan actually talked about it on one of his podcasts, and he kind of put it into perspective for me, where he talked about like when you walk up to the shore and you're just overlooking the ocean, it is such a humbling experience because you are literally face to face with an entire ecosystem and an entire world that we think we know, but we don't. We don't know shit about the ocean. And we barely scratch the surface of what's going on in there. And we're finding new shit all the time. And we haven't even been able to get to the very, very core, the deepest aspects of these oceans. We get pretty deep, but there's an issue with pressure, right? Yeah. It's only so far we can go. But a lot of what I've read, especially recently, talked a lot about, why is it that we think that aliens are going to come from the sky? I mean, they very well could. Yeah. But why wouldn't we think that they wouldn't come from the ground? Yeah. Like from underground. Makes sense. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the Telos live underneath the ground. Yeah, I'm on board. And they're a part of the Galactic Federation. And hearing a lot of Galactic Federation talk recently. Oh, a lot. A lot. Yeah. Gotta have somebody that channels the Galactic Federation of Light on the show. Didn't we talk to someone? Yeah, we're gonna have her. Yeah, we're gonna have her come on pretty soon. But there's also another woman that I want to get in contact with. And her name is April Elizabeth. Oh, April Elizabeth, if you're listening, we want to get in contact with you. Yes, she's a direct channel of the Galactic Federation of Light. Well, fucking A, let's do it. Yeah. Magenta Pixie, that woman in the UK that I follow, she's a channeler too. Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of, now that we're talking about it, we're probably going to wrap this up pretty soon, but we're going to have a really amazing 2021. Yeah, we've got a lot of really awesome guests coming on. I'm pumped. Yeah.
So I'm looking at our website and I see his face here, so I have to talk about it. But Luke's episode about his mother and writing the book and her art.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a great episode. I mean, and I love Luke. He's a personal friend. And I think that Luke is one of the most interesting, intelligent, and eccentric people I've ever met.
Yeah. Do you want to just do a quick snapshot of the story behind Luke?
Yeah. So his mother had lupus and died whenever he was a young adult. In his first year of college, I think. Yeah. First year of college. And she was an artist, and she was kind of like a free spirit type. So he didn't really know his mom that well because he was really self-centered and into sports. And just like most kids, you know, you start to detach from your parents right around like 13 years old and trying to find your own identity, you know. So she subsequently ended up dying, and he didn't really get to know her in the way that that a child should know their parents. So he went on this quest to find all of her art pieces and to gather them to make this book. And each person that had one of her pieces of art, she never sold them; she just gave them away. He had a story from every person, and their kind of like their story about their relationship with her and who she was as a person. So it's very interesting. There was a book that I read, Nikki Sixx's book from Motley Crue. Yeah. So, and he wrote his book in this way where it had perspectives from other people. So he would explain a story or a memory from his memory and how he recalled it. And then everyone that was in the story kind of like shared their experience, and it's really interesting how different their experiences are of the same situation, of the same story. So his book is a lot like that. You know, you could he already knew some information, but whenever he was speaking to these people, like they just had a very different recollection of, you know, whatever experience that he knew about. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool, but he wrote a very beautiful book, and it has some really amazing art. And so Luke Ollett, that was episode 20.
Yeah.
So.
And he embodies just the ultimate like hero's journey. And it's almost like Source put him on this accelerated course and had gone through all those different challenges for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
You know, like that whole process, like awakened his spirit to, you know, a so much vaster space that, you know, he wasn't aware of before.
Yeah.
You know, and his mom could have possibly been what they consider in Buddhism, a bodhisattva, somebody that had lived several lifetimes. And she just decided to make the decision to come to this planet just to assist him in his evolution.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think she did that. I mean, and he's evolved into an amazing person. And I think that book really helped him kind of develop socially.
Yeah.
Into the person that he is today. So
yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah. And then, you know, and then there's the episode with Sequoia, episode 26 about the chakra system in the penis.
Oh yeah. That was a
good one.
That was, I didn't realize that the penis had 7 chakras.
Yeah.
The same way that we have the chakra system on our bodies.
You know what's funny is every person that I've talked to of my friends that have listened, that's the thing that they bring up. That's the takeaway from that episode. Everyone's like, oh yeah. And then the circumcision, how, you know, your heart chakra is connected, you know, at the top of the penis. And whenever they circumcise, it disconnects.
Right.
That disconnects from the heart, which I thought was really interesting.
It is really powerful. It makes you wonder how many people are out there just moving about the planet, all disconnected from their hearts because they're circumcised.
Yep.
But, you know, I don't think there are other, like she said, you just have to maintain a deeper practice with them.
Right.
It's just another level of learning.
Yeah.
You can always rebuild the heart chakra at the tip of your penis.
For sure.
You know?
For sure. And then, you know, one of our more recent ones was Sarah Rose. And she talked a lot about, it was like business and spirituality and being a life coach and that kind of thing. And I really liked her talking about her soulmate client.
Yeah.
And how she finds clients that really see her value.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool because I think that that's something that we all forget, right?
Yeah.
Is that we're so focused on like who's not going to see our value and what we need to do to combat that.
Yeah.
And she just focuses on only people that see her value.
Right. The one thing that I like about the energy behind somebody like Sarah or Sequoia or Sophia is that they really embody the age that we're coming into.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Sophia being an Akashic Records reader, spiritual interior designer, then you have Sarah, like there's an underpinning of some level of spirituality in their professional business.
Yeah.
And I think that embodies, what the Great Conjunction really represents is now we're going into this age of Aquarius, which is an age of innovation. It's an age of exploring a much vaster space, about being more open. Just like you said, it's a humanitarian. There's a different level of compassion and love. And I feel like just the energy is going to change in this new sort of age that we're in. And I feel like people like them embody that.
Yeah.
Because you're putting together what, has been for a long time a really confusing conversation, which is money and spirituality.
Right.
You know? And I'd been reluctant to bring that up on the podcast, but just even in my practice in general as a sound healer for a long time.
Right.
And the fact that you have these light workers, these people that are thriving in their businesses, not just for the money, but they found a way to integrate those two. Right. And that's an inspiring thing to do because we're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I think in the years ahead and the era ahead, you'd be surprised. I feel like this whole what we would consider new age stuff is going to become a little bit more accepted, and widespread. I
think it's starting to become a little bit more mainstream too. People are starting to kind of awaken to it.
Right.
But and one guest we didn't talk about was Sedef.
Oh yeah.
Sedef.
She was a powerful woman.
Really? Yeah. Very much so. Yeah.
She had this presence to her that was just undeniable when she came in. Mm-hmm. She was somebody that came in and had something to say.
Oh, for sure.
She is of Armenian descent.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during that time where, Armenia is still going through really difficult challenges with the wars that are going on over there. But just her as a female, having experienced various levels of oppression just as a female.
Yeah.
And coming out of that with a teaching, her episode was about shadow work.
Yeah.
And she definitely embodied that.
Yeah, she did. And she does coaching for people who have experienced a lot of those gender type injustices. Yeah. So I thought she was really great. And I don't know why we didn't talk about her. She was awesome.
Oh, yeah, we're talking about her. But the one thing, because she talked about Joe Dispenza too.
Yeah,
a lot of our guests have talked about Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, I love Joe Dispenza. Yeah, I love him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she talked about her morning practice. And after her episode, I was like, I need to be better about that and have a morning practice. Yeah. Yeah, so. Yeah,
the first 15 minutes of your day dictate how your entire day will be.
Yeah, that's what they say.
I love that feeling that you get in the morning when you wake up. And this is how forgiving and how compassionate the universe is that when you go to sleep at night with whatever story, whatever narrative that you have in your mind, of all the things that you have to go through, it could be financial troubles, it could be relationship troubles. You swear at 9:00 p.m. that they're real.
Yeah.
And that they're always going to be in your field and you're trying to develop some sort of way of combating them or getting over them. And then when you go to bed and close your eyes and sleep for 5-8 hours a day and you wake up in the morning, you get that period of time within the first 5 or 10 minutes where you don't fucking remember any of that.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Right? You wake up and the only thing that you're really embodying is presence and your awareness.
Yeah.
And that walk from your bed to the restroom, and at least from my experience, have been some of the most blissful times because you're not thinking about the fact that you are who you are.
Yeah.
That thought doesn't even come across your mind.
Yeah.
And that is a compassionate impulse from the universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it allows you to start fresh.
Right.
It allows you to start new. And that is that whole sort of polarity that exists in our world, which is, which enforces this idea that life and death need to exist collaboratively.
Right.
Because that's exactly what happens when you close your eyes at the end of the night, is you're dying to a certain aspect of yourself that you think is real. Yeah. And when you wake up in the morning, you are completely different.
Yeah.
And all it takes is one thought to dream yourself back into existence. Mm-hmm. And you have a choice as to what type of being or what type of you to dream yourself back into.
Yeah.
And it's an easier said than done thing because your entire life is worked around that specific person. But you can make baby steps, little strides, you know? So in that first 15 minutes when you wake up, try to extend that as much as you can, not by trying, but just being.
Yeah. That whole cliche, sleep on it. You know, when you're upset with someone, like, oh, don't make a decision now, just sleep on it.
Just sleep on it.
Yeah. Because when you wake up the next day, it just doesn't seem that bad.
Doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah.
And if you're one of those people that, you know, works a 9-to-5 job, you could also embody this practice too. You know how like when you're so close to an Excel spreadsheet and you're trying to, your mind is doing this, you know, crash override in the movie Hackers where you got E equals MC square flying over your head and you're like really deep into some pivot tables. Step away from the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Go outside. Take a few minutes.
Give that pivot table a break.
Fuck that pivot table, first of all. But if you must, give it a break. And then, you know, you'd be surprised. Everybody goes through this, right? And that's what they tell you. Just take a break, come back, and you have an entirely new perspective.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, you can embody it. You can embody that practice in everything. But when you wake up in the morning, really like rest in that.
Yeah.
You know? See,
like
the thing is when I get into the shower and I'm sitting in the shower, some of the most amazing epiphanies happen in the shower.
Oh, yeah.
For a lot of people, I actually lived with a roommate a while back. It was actually Jameson. He was my roommate for a long time. He used to talk in the shower all the time.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I talk to myself in the shower
really?
quite a bit. Yeah. I'm not a shower singer, but I'll definitely talk to myself.
What do you talk about?
It's more like I'll think about a conversation that I had with someone and I'm like, fuck, I should have said this and I should have said it like this, you know?
Yeah?
And I'll think of other things, like I'll replay conversations and things like that. And sometimes the podcast even, I'm like, fuck, why did I say that? There's so many times, like, that's not what I was trying to say at all. You know, that's not what was in my brain. Why did that come out of my mouth? But
that's another one of those things that I think me and Jen have also experienced is just sometimes just saying shit the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh man.
Let me tell you guys, this thing is not easy.
It's not easy.
You know, but if you keep working at it and you believe in it and you just love just the theme and just the entire world of what we're into, then you just grow from it.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
It takes practice.
Yeah. It's been a really, really amazing journey, but I'm glad that we were able to kind of sit and just give a recap on the last 8 months we've been doing this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
8 months.
8 months.
I
right?
know.
Crazy.
He's got like, you know, a decade more to go.
Yeah. We survived a couple seasons.
You know
like,
what I mean?
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. We've seen people come and go. We've had, you know, lots of different things happen in our lives. We've had people even pass away.
Yeah.
You know, relationships start, relationships end for us, a lot of people. So life happens in this space.
Man, a lot of life has happened in the last 8 months.
And hopefully, you know, 6 months or a year from now, we can look back and be like, wow, like we made that happen during quarantine.
Totally.
You know, and we hope that if anybody's listening, that we brought some light into your life during this difficult time.
Yeah, I hope so.
Because it definitely brought that into mine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to have a big year ahead. And hopefully the next time we talk, it'll be 2021.
Wow, that's crazy.
And the universe will have assigned us an alien.
Oh, that can't wait.
A guide that'll just like help us along our journey.
I was hoping we'd get some aliens during the Grand Conjunction, but it didn't work out. But I've been getting crazy dreams.
That's how they're going to come. That's how Barbara Messiniak talked about them. They're fifth dimensional aliens.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. I read that book. I should know.
So all you have to do is just believe.
Yeah.
No.
Ask, believe, receive.
Ask, believe, and receive. I like that. Ask, believe, and receive. Yeah.
That's a secret.
The
secret.
Thank you for tuning in to the Divine Nobodies podcast. I'm going to do that at the beginning and at the end of every episode from now on.
Oh, please don't.
I'm going to teach you how to do it, Jen. I'm going to teach you how to do it. Oh, thank you for so much for tuning in. Anyways, if you guys are on Instagram, you can find us at Divine Nobodies. You can also go on YouTube. Watch the video. We record these things.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And if you guys have any questions, you go to our website, www.divine-nobodies.com.
And we've got some foxy bitches on here. Just saying.
We got some really beautiful goddesses on here. You know? Yeah. Anyways, we'll talk to you guys soon. Namaste.
Namaste, friends.